Welcome everyone to this CSM side event, which is entitled Food for Our Future, Youth Leading Radical Transformations Towards Economies of Wellbeing. My name is Anissa Madden, and along with Julia Spanier, we are co-facilitators together with Nadia Lambeck of the CSM Youth Working Group. And Julia and I will co-moderate this panel today. Before we start, let me just explain some of the technical aspects of this call. First of all, for interpretation, you will see a globe, a button at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and you can click on that globe and select the language in which you would like to listen to the side event. And those instructions are just going to be put into the chat now for you. We also have a raise hand function and the chat, which you can put your comments in the chat and your questions, and we will have some time for discussion after the panel presentation. So please do use the raise hand function at the bottom of the chat as well. So to introduce the event, first of all, we'd like to introduce the Civil Society and Indigenous Peoples Mechanism for relations with the UN Committee on World Food Security. The CSM is the largest international space of civil society organizations working to eradicate food insecurity and malnutrition. The purpose of the CSM is to facilitate the participation of those who are most affected by food insecurity and malnutrition, those who also produce and distribute the majority of the world's food, into the policy processes of the CFS through their participating organizations. All the participating organizations in the CSM belong to one of the following 11 constituencies: smallholder farmers, pastoralists, fisherfolk, indigenous peoples, agricultural and food workers, landless people, women, youth, consumers, urban food insecure, and non-governmental organizations. The participating organizations, particularly those who organize small-scale food producers and consumers, have more than 300 million affiliated members from all continents of the world. They are the organizations of the rights holders that are the subjects of their own development, and also the most important contributors to food security and nutrition worldwide. The CSM Youth Working Group is a space for youth from organizations that participate in the CSM to engage in the work of the CFS. Youth in our working group have a plurality of understandings, experiences, knowledge, and expectations about the future, but together have common concerns and a common vision of the path towards solutions. The CSM Youth Working Group enthusiastically supports the CFS commitment to negotiating a policy instrument dedicated to youth, and welcomes the recent recent HLPE report on youth engagement and employment in agriculture and food systems. The HLPE report is crucially important because it provides the evidence base for CFS member governments to develop a set of policy recommendations specifically focused on youth in food systems. We, the CSM Youth Working Group, are co-hosting this side event together with the UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, Michael Fakhri, to create ample space during this 49th plenary session of the CFS to discuss the recent HLPE report from the perspective of youth. The HLPE report's conceptual framework signals the urgent need to transition towards economies of well-being. It emphasizes that a redistribution of power is urgently needed to transform existing social, political, and economic relationships and conditions within and across countries. Policies must go beyond prioritizing increased economic growth at the cost of social and ecological considerations. The HLPE report emphasizes the need for governments to create public policy frameworks that support and protect dignified livelihoods and healthy environments for all. The report notes that food sovereignty, the right of peoples to determine their own food and agriculture systems, is a precondition of true food security. The HLPE report identifies 4 pillars to guide government policy on youth engagement in transforming food systems and building economies of well-being. Those 4 pillars are rights, equity, agency, and recognition. The 4 pillars of the HLPE report is what our side event will focus on today. We'll begin with a short welcome video from Michael Fakhri, the UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, who is based in the US and therefore, due to the time of this side event, could not be here in person. Following this welcome, we'll move to the panel presentations, which will be given by 5 youth representing different constituencies of civil society, who will each explore one of the 4 pillars of the HLPE report. We're also very grateful to welcome Dr. Rui Lopez, Director of the National Center of Disease Prevention and Control for the Mexican government's Ministry of Health, to our panel, who will respond to and share his reflections about the youth perspectives. After his response, we will then open the floor for discussion with all the participants of this side event. And as I mentioned, you can raise your hand or type a question in the chat, and we will moderate the discussion. So again, welcome to everybody. Thank you very much for being here. And we'll now share the video of welcome from Michael Fakhri, UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food and professor at the University of Oregon School of Law.
People's Mechanism Youth Working Group. My name is Michael Fakhri, and I am the UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food. It's my pleasure and honor to co-sponsor this panel with the Civil Society and Indigenous Peoples Mechanism Youth Working Group. I apologize for not being able to attend today in person, but you're watching this when it's around 4 in the morning, my time. When the Youth Working Group approached me about this panel, I immediately agreed to co-sponsor it. This was not just because it was youth-led. The youth of today are a diverse mix of people and perspectives. Some are more committed to human rights than others. I agreed because the focus of their panel is exactly what I think we should all be discussing. You are all here right now to discuss what it means for youth to lead radical transformations toward economies of well-being. It is the subject that should be central to all aspects of CFS work. The CFS and all international institutions and processes should be asking themselves, what would it take to ensure that an institution is led by youth committed to radical transformation and human rights? Not just to allow youth to participate, but ensure that youth are supported and enabled to hold leadership positions, to be given a privileged position at the negotiation table. For the CFS, this would require revisiting some important procedural questions during the pandemic. Things like youth process is an opportunity for the CFS to innovate. They would be thinking about questions of language, interpretation, and time zones, not just as logistical questions, but questions of access and justice. When the CFS moves to in-person meetings, it would mean addressing the fact that different youth have had unequal access to vaccines. Let me conclude by saying that youth often bring radical ideas because they have very little to lose and everything to gain. But today, I think youth are bringing radical ideas under very different circumstances. With climate change, with the brutalities of COVID-19, with a global recession, the youth have everything to lose. The Youth Working Group represents some of the most marginalized communities: rural youth, indigenous youth, working class youth, young women and girls. No matter how radical their ideas may seem to you, I think they are feasible. Not only feasible, but necessary and practical. In fact, the ideas you will be hearing are not coming out of nowhere. The CSM Youth Working Group have been incredibly dedicated and organized for years. They are wise beyond their years and sharp as hell. We are lucky to have leaders like them in these difficult times. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. I wish we could thank you in person, but thank you so much for that beautiful welcome and for your support in co-sponsoring this side event and for all your support of the CSM Youth Working Group. So I will now pass the floor to Julia, who will introduce our panel speakers as well as the 4 pillars at the center of the HLPE report. Julia, over to you.
Thank you so much, Anissa. So our first speaker today is Krishna Kumari, who is the president of MIJARC. MIJARC is the international movement of the agricultural and rural Catholic youth. Krishna is a small-scale food producer in India, and he has just joined the co-coordination team of the CSM Youth constituency. He is going to reflect on the pillar of the HLPE report of recognition. The HLPE report names recognition as, I quote, a crucial condition for youth to be accorded space in society and be acknowledged as valuable members on a par with other groups. Following the HLPE, policies must, I quote again, recognize the diversity, intersectionality, and context specificity of youth aspirations and experience across the globe. Now, the floor is yours, Chris. You have 7 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Julia, for the introduction. So I'm very happy to be here to present about the recognition pillar according to the HLPE report. So I'm very happy and also proud of to share this wonderful topic, Food for Our Future, Youth Leading Radical Transformation towards Economies of Well-being Transformation. So I am going to present about the specific of Indian scenario and then the situation of systematic racism in India and intersectionality. So I would like to request maybe slides can share, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I think Teresa or Marion, do you have the slides to share? Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. So in the intersectionality, we have different elements like gender, class, religion, age, race. These are all the different sections. And apart from these, the supporting elements are sexuality, ethnicity, education, language, heritage, and history. So first of all, I would like to go for the systematic racism in India, about the caste system in India. So India, you know, is a subcontinent having more than 30 states, and we have the second largest population in the world, and majority of the population is for the young people, those who are involving in different areas. So in the caste system, the Manudharma, in Indian terminology called Manudharma Shastra, they classified into the people into different categories. Number one, that is the pyramid on the top, Brahmins. The Brahmins is the caste. They defined that they are the like priests and a higher caste, and they are the one, the leading and giving intellectual people, like that they designed. And next category is the Kshatriyas. They are the like administrators, rulers, warriors. Then Vaishnavas, these Vaishyas are the artisans, like farmers, merchants, tradesmen. And the fourth category is Shudras. So it's a manual labor. And the final category they described as the Dalit, it's like called as the untouchability. They are the street cleaners, manual tasks, and scavengers. So they are all, these are all the different categories they defined in Indian caste system. So the majority of the people in India are the Dalit untouchabilities, then Shudras. But the power and also the administration.
Chris, you muted you somehow. Maybe you can unmute you. I cannot hear you right now. I think you're
Me?
perfect. Now I can hear you again. Yes.
Okay. So the system is the top class people, they are designed this system. But in this, the Dalits or untouchabilities are really became marginalized, poor, and they are became slavery. So to avoid this slavery system and to recognize this lower class people, so in Indian, the father of constitutional is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, made a constitution of India, and he made some new special reservations and special policies. And by these special reservations and policies, the young people of India, of Dalit untouchability people, they are also having the possibility of good education, health, employment, entrepreneurship, and also equality. And so many policies are making this, the Dalit people also became like equal for everyone. So this is the one of the solution for this caste system. So I can go for the next, for the gender equality. So in India, you know that men are the dominated people in India, always in, it is a past history. In the political, in the economical, and in the cultural, in any background, men is always weighted, means dominated. That's what this figure shows. So women are neglected, and they made women as always at home, and they are like a secondary people. And in the wage related also, work is same, but men is paid more than female. So these are all the discriminations and also patriarchal things was there in India. So, but now due to this modernization and also this constitution of India, so now the women is also getting equal wages, equal recognition, equal identity, and also mutual respect. And the women is in politics now, and the women is in the employment, and the women is in entrepreneurship, also developing more and more. So this is all the different systematic racism system are there in India, but at the same time, we have a very good solutions of the young people. Now they are involving in agriculture, producing the food, and also transforming to the economies. And the last one, we will go for the religion. So you know that India has a big demographics in India as the religious. As this chart shows that Hindu is the religion having 79.8%, and Muslims we have 14.2%, Christians 2.3%, Buddhists and Jain and others 2.0%, and Sikh 1.7%. And now the leading government of India is highly supporting to the Hindu system, Hindu religion, and the minorities are like Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, and Sikh people are facing challenges. And the people, of course, India is a secular country, and we are the biggest constitutional in the world, but it is on the paper. But in realities, there are many challenges. The people, they don't have easy access to change their religion, and this is also one of the biggest challenges right now taking place still in India. But we have also several different policies, and also the young people involving in policy making, and also young people involving in the politics. Young people are involving in the agriculture, and also university draft making of policies. By that way, the slowly things are changing and decreasing all these inequalities, reducing inequalities like caste system, patriarchal system, and also religions, and even LGBT. And we are more standing for the human rights. So human rights is one of the fundamental for every human being, but depending upon the tradition and culture of the country, some such type of problems are rising. But now we are the young people involving in policy making, the changes are taking place. Now young people is acting as actors between the governments and the people, and lot of changes are taking place. So on this recognition topic of HLP report from India, we have I would like to give a best example. Recently, the government of Telangana in India, they introduced a policy called Dalit Bandhu. And this is a special policy giving for the Dalit, means untouchable lower class caste system people, and the government is giving financial support for their education, health, entrepreneurship, and also employment and different fields. So by that way, we are going to reduce these inequalities and giving more space for the young people in the recognition of getting involved in the policy making and making that as a young people as a change makers of food for our future. And youth is a radical transformation towards economies of well-being transformation. Thank you very much, Julia.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much. I think your presentation made very clear the importance of an intersectional approach to the recognition of youth. So thank you. Our next speaker that we have now is Giulia Simula. Giulia is from Sardinia in Italy, and she is part of the international network Urgency that promotes all forms of partnership between small-scale producers and local consumers. She is also currently completing her PhD in rural development. Now, Giulia is going to share her reflections on the pillar of agency. For the HLPE, the agency pillar is a reminder that, I quote, positive transformative change must recognize youth as active citizens, agents, interested and fully capable to drive urgently needed political and economic renewal. The HLPE stresses, however, that, I quote, young people's agency must be understood within the wider context of power relations in which they are involved. The floor is yours now, Giulia. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. Thanks. Good afternoon or morning or night, everyone. Thanks for participating to our self-organized side event. We are actually very happy to see that agency is one of the main pillars that has been recognized by the HLPE report on youth. As Julia was saying, the agency pillar underlines that the world's young people are not simply objects or instruments of development and economic growth, but they are a potentially powerful political, social, and economic force in the shift towards more sustainable and holistic food systems. As CSM Youth Constituency, we are very aware of that. And as we state in one of our documents, and I quote, "Youth are political subjects and have the right, the capacity and agency to build spaces of solidarity, inclusion and dignity. We learn from and exchange with different struggles, movements, institutions, and alternative voices. Through practicing and sharing our diverse knowledges and culture, including indigenous knowledges and practices, we as youth, we resist growing corporatization while co-creating life-affirming worlds and futures by building strong connections to the land, water, seeds, plants, and all living beings." So I think we think it's really time for governments to recognize our agency, our knowledge and our value and potential of young people. It's really time for governments to stop and listen to us now. We don't really need solutions, but we need to be given space and possibilities to share our visions and to put them in practice, and to enact the change that we already carry forward in our local realities. We are very tired of reading nice words and policies and government projects that talk about inclusion, gender inclusion, youth inclusion and participation, and then realize that everything is just carried out in a business as usual fashion. I'm really tired about this. And the examples that we can make are endless. In all sectors of our society, this can be said to be true. And therefore, we try to move along against all obstacles that we face, structural obstacles and intergenerational ones. We try to transform our communities, but sometimes we are almost condemned to migrate to other cities and to sell our labor force for almost nothing for some of us. And it's very sad to see that governments are constantly wasting youth potential. They are condemning entire regions and countries and countrysides to die and to fail, to depopulate, and they are destroying rich and biodiverse food systems that we believe are the backbone of our societies, of our economies, of our culture and traditions. But fortunately, not everything is so dark, and some youth decide to struggle for the realization of food sovereignty. Many youth around the world, we realize that by being part of the civil society mechanism. And we do so despite all of the barriers. So, for example, in my region in Sardinia, which is one of the poorest region of Italy, there are many examples of these actions carried out by youth. Many are coming back to agriculture after having studied in universities or practical studies, and they valorize their family farms and they try to find new connections with consumers in cities. Recently, during the COVID lockdown, with a group of young people from my region, we have created like a very simple website in order to map local food producers and to facilitate the connection between consumers and farmers. And these became essential when during the lockdown, governments shut down local markets and consumers didn't even know the producers in their areas. And they were, on the contrary, incentivized to go to buy in big supermarket chains. Other examples, in France, for example, some friends from Urgency as well, they're doing a similar thing in schools. They are connecting students directly to producers in order to show that you can actually buy healthy and appropriate local food without spending a lot of money and without necessarily being rich. Because it's not true that supermarket and industrially produced food is the only affordable food. This is probably like one of the biggest lies of our time, and many young organizations are trying to counter this. There are many more activities of young people trying to revive ghost towns in the countryside through art, music, culinary activities, and touristic agri-food path, and so on. But we need governments to support us. Now, I don't know how many people are attending this side event. I hope there are some governmental ministries as well. I know there are some. And yes, we need them to support us, to support food sovereignty, and to support our activities. We are ready to enact a meaningful and radical change. We need a radical change if we want to fix the mess that human beings and capitalism has created. But it seems like governments are not ready. So it seems like they do everything they can to make local production and local exchange difficult and expensive and sometimes even risky. So this is just a call, a loud call to ask governments to give us space and opportunities to incentivize local food systems. And as Julia was mentioning, to make sure that participation takes into account different power relations so that it becomes meaningful and true.
Thank you so much, Julia. That was great to hear your perspective and also your emphasis on the importance of governments to support and not just stand there and clap when youth kind of show their agency in the middle of the middle crises that they find themselves. Thanks so much. The next speaker for our panel, I think, I maybe already see the video, is Carson Kiburo. Carson is a youth leader and a community organizer from the Enrois indigenous community of Kenya. He is the co-chair of the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus and co-founder of Jamia Celia Center, a youth-led nonprofit focusing on climate change, biodiversity, agropastoralism, and intergenerational knowledge systems. Just like Krishna Kumari, Carson has recently become a member of the co-coordination of the CSM Youth. Now, Carson's speech is going to reflect on the pillar of equity. In the HLPE report, I quote, "The equity pillar reflects the fact that current generations of children and youth are growing up in a context of persistent and increasing inequalities in income and wealth, both within and between societies. The HLPE report refers to, I quote again, redistributive policies as critical for rebuilding equitable food systems in the face of compounding crises." Now the floor is yours, Carson. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Julia. And I just hope that my voice is audible enough. Good, thank you so much, I appreciate it. Greetings to all of you who are in this Zoom link and those who are watching us from the social media links that have been shared, or even you, if you would be reading or listening to us as a recording thereafter. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. I am delighted to share a few thoughts with you and the entire world in this CFS side event by the Youth Working Group. And I will just speak, as you've heard from Julia, on climate action and climate justice and their significance in the climate literacy, all connected to food sovereignty. First things first, imperialist and corporate capture. It is not surprising that even in these new uncertain times, we'll still see new inequalities like the vaccine apartheid. And I'm using the word apartheid intentionally. Consumerism suffocates the world. And I am no scientist or doctor, but still the statistics speak loudly about nutrition-related health challenges in the Africa region and the entire world. But I'm focusing on Africa region because that's where I live, and I've seen the effects stemming from human activities that have affected the health of the people and their relationship with nature. It comes down to food sovereignty. Like 20 years ago, we didn't have a lot of cancer or food-related diseases, but we see right now. We are used to hearing indifference from developed nations who, ironically, should be ashamed at how they've treated indigenous people, exclaim, and I quote, "These floods can't be happening in a developed country." We saw that when flash floods swept Europe, some parts of Europe and some parts of the US. But indigenous peoples and local communities have always sounded the alarms. Until the second week of August this year, we saw the code red from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that is the IPCC report, confirming over 8 years of advocacy. At the forefront, we've always pushed for drastic action for the sake of Mother Earth. Without the meaningful engagement of the youth and their communities from the start, self-determination rights are intertwined with our lands, territories, and natural resources. It is the power to determine our technologies, cultural education, customary laws, and even sustain our age-old food sovereignty as a people. Our relationship with nature. The link between our knowledge systems and challenges posed by imperialistic scars, which I mentioned before, which exist today. We are agents to counter that. And I challenge all of you, the youth from all these diverse backgrounds, we are the agents to challenge all that. And I am mentioning the link between those imperialistic scars and what we see right now in climate action discourse. Because the nature's greatest protectors need protection too, there has always been a lifeline link to indigenous people's knowledge systems passed down from our ancestors. In the declaration that CSM Youth Working Group shared in October 2020, we see increasing demands on parents and caregivers, in particular women. COVID-19 has exacerbated already existing structural, systemic, and equal burden on women and young women for meeting care responsibilities. On equity, we need to entrench peace-building efforts on what matters the most. Root causes such as fight over natural resources case in point, women and children are affected adversely by climate change and desertification in the Lake Chad Basin. For instance, the Halibrides as a survival mechanism where there is conflict over diminishing water and pasture. Root cause, climate change and desertification, I see that. And I see nationally determined contributions, popularly known as NDCs, as well-quoted rhetorics. This is not to say that they are not great, I kid you not, but we must applaud the most promising ones. I don't have enough time to go deep into that today, but youth, smallholders, fisher folks, and pastoralists are responding to the hardships related to COVID-19 and government's responses to it, while at the same time already under accelerating pressures of global warming and environmental degradation caused by global industrial capitalism. This acceleration drastically pressures the adaptation space and time for the populations and nature itself, fundamental pillars for agricultural production. In the coming COP26, the debate needs to move from local people. What I mean is moving, getting from the local people, the farmers, to their local administrations and build synergy with national or federal governments. The government should move away from the self-praising that we're used to hearing. Climate justice is at the heart of this conversation. I repeat that. Climate justice is at the heart of this conversation. The right to land, inclusion, policy, and cogeneration efforts. In a nutshell, the human rights-based approach. The youth are the world's majority, yet we are still a checkbox, and our voice is not as heard and certainly not amplified, and due to inefficient policy gaps and insufficient capacity to engage. If the youth have limited knowledge on policy, how about meaningful engagement? These and other factors, parties should put more effort into climate financing, what we call incentivizing low carbon footprints and negotiating with the developed states for mutually beneficial and respectful adaptation mechanisms. And how can we reverse that so that the people can live meaningful lives and help build back better towards 2030 targets? And from the community that I come from, I work with capacity developments to understand, adapt, and make sustainable solutions. During my work in a small way, as an agent of big and ambitious climate action, sorry, I had a timer and it looks like my time is almost up. And that's my message here. Let's support the efforts of indigenous peoples and local communities on climate literacy as well. And I cannot mention enough the intergenerational gap. We need to build the capacity of the youth to hone their traditional knowledge systems and nature-based interventions. We have to build the capacity of the young people to engage more on the decent yet beneficial farming regimes such as agroecology to help restore soil fertility and sustainable integrated pest management. Well, I think in a nutshell, we need to mainstream climate justice in the entire conversation to tackle land rights, food security, and most importantly, promote nature-based conservations toward biodiversity regeneration. And with that, my friends, I really thank you for the opportunity and to shine a light on these key issues on equity and inclusion, touching on climate justice, and climate literacy. Thank you so much. Back to you, Julia.
Thank you so much, Carson. What an important intervention, calling out imperialism and capitalism as systemic root causes behind the many hardships that youth are experiencing right now. And such a powerful call for mainstreaming climate justice and climate literacy. Thanks so much. Our next two speakers are going to reflect on the final pillar, the pillar of rights. So there are two speakers talking on the pillar of rights. In this pillar, the HLPE, and I quote again, incorporates the general triangle of rights to protection, non-discrimination, and participation, as applied in various UN conventions and declarations. Here, the HLPE refers particularly to the right to food, the rights of indigenous peoples, the rights of peasants and people working in rural areas, the rights of women and of children, and the right to work. So first, on this pillar of rights, I give the floor to Anuka de Silva. Anuka is from the Movement for Land and Agriculture Reform in Sri Lanka and a member of the International Coordinating Committee of La Via Campesina. I don't see you, but I think you're already here. If you're there, the floor is yours.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julia. I think thank you so much inviting me as a panelist. My English is not good because it's but I try to do my best. First I would like to say no future without food sovereignty. That is the main caption for the La Via Campesina in this year, because we are celebrating 25th anniversary of the food sovereignty in this year. And we are organizing so many events. parallelly the CSM event. And I really like to say, like, as a food sovereignty, we are giving as a big tool as a way of living. This is the main thing for we are introducing. And also food sovereignty is a global idea for what we are going to do for the future. But we all know what's happening in the capitalism and the neoliberalism policies. We all know what happened to the right to percentages. Especially we are talking about not only the percent, all kind of food producers, small scale food producers. We all know still 70% of small scale food producers producing food for the world, but we didn't have any right. Especially I'm going to speak mainly right to natural resource and development. Who's controlling the natural resources and who's get decision for the development? This is the main challenge as a percentage, as a food producers for us. As a Asian women farmer, I have to say a lot of things about the natural resources, because in the Asian context, I think Krish mentioned about what happening in the Asian religion, especially the South Asian context, about the natural resources and the content of the development. As a in this our situation, like a geopolitical location, we are in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and the China imperialism and the Europe imperialism trying to grab our resources. Mainly, I'm going to say mainly as a farmers, we lost our right to land, water, and biodiversity because of the big multinational companies involving the grabbing our resources. We losing day by day our resources. That is the main point. And also I like to say that case, it's because in the Asian context, we are always under the imperialism because of the economic pattern. We like our comrade said, in the Africa also, like similar to in Asian context, we are losing our natural resources and development. We really need to bring back as a young generation. That is the big battle for us. We really need to involve with the decision making point to how to manage our natural resources, how we bring the development like that. And also day by day we are losing our land, water, and especially seed, because these multinational companies get our like a seed authority. They're controlling whole seed pattern in here, because we're losing our native seeds in here. I think all over the world, we really need to get our knowledge, ancestors' knowledge, how to protect our seed, how to conservation our seeds, and also the natural resources. That is the main point. And also, I'm going to next, as a women, I really need to talk special about the right to person women rights. And as a in the field, we losing our we didn't get the real recognition as a percent women. We didn't get any not same wages in the our field. And also the main thing, because women are the main character in the field as a agriculture sector, they they have a like a special skill and knowledge to protect seed conservation, but it's not recognized by this corporate system. They have stolen our knowledge. Now they really need to bring back to our knowledge. We really need to meet our generation, past generation, to share their knowledge with us, because as a young farmers, we lost our knowledge, especially as a woman in the South Asian context and the Asian context. We cannot enter the decision making point, because as a women in the culturally, it's like agriculture have some kind of barriers to enter to decision making point. As a women, they're trying to control us, especially because we cannot access to the like a water, land in the Sri Lanka. For us as a women, we didn't have a land deed because of the women. Only 16% women in Sri Lanka have a land deed. It means we didn't have a land right as a women. And also as a percent women, who we are the main part of the making food. We have a real good skill for the making food, like a food pattern, but this big companies and capitalism system destroying our food patterns. Now we are just entering with the instant food culture, but we didn't have a making our food in our own. We lost our knowledge. That's why as a young women really need to bring back the knowledge for our past, because we really need to fix this point. That is, we say the food sovereignty is the way of living. We really need to get back our rights as a women, as a farmers, as a peasantries, as a small scale farmers. And this is my main point. And I want to say, especially our comrade said, we really need to think about the right to biodiversity, because in this industrial agriculture, we are losing our biodiversity day by day, because we are only following the system in who bring in the capitalism, who's controlling by the our agriculture. We really need to think about not only as food is not in the human right, food is the for all. That's we really need to think about our biodiversity and our environment. Without environment justice, we cannot we cannot achieve the food sovereignty. We really need to change the young people's mindset up, because I think South Asia is the huge population of the young population in here in the world. We are the biggest one, but we really need to set up our mindset. Thank you so much. Invite for me as a panelist. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anuka. Such an important speech, underlining the situation of young women in agriculture and calling out the violent corporate grabbing of natural resources, while at the same time demanding the realization of the right to land, water, and biodiversity. Thank you so much. So now, as the last youth speaker, I'm very happy to invite and give the floor to Alice Mueluka, who is also going to share reflections on the pillar of rights. Alice is a member of the Tanzania Plantation and Agricultural Workers Union and a member of the IUF Young Workers Committee. So wonderful to have you here. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm very happy to have a speaker in this very important meeting. as we all know that workers' rights, they influence workers' condition in relation to their employment. So I will be speaking 4 main points. And the first one is rights to living wage and benefits. As we all know, when people are employed in agriculture work, they are looking to earn living wage so they can support their family and being able to access food, clothing, medical care. Therefore, as we know, in agriculture sector, most of the young workers are employed in the sector. The rights to living wage and benefit is very important, since few of the employers, they are paying less. They are paying people the poverty wage. Therefore, they can't afford all the necessary benefit. Apart from that, they're paying less, but not considering provision of housing for the workers. So people are living in poor condition. Therefore, it's very important for the countries, but international organization to make sure the employers are making sure people are getting this one. And the second one is the rights to health and safe workplace. We all know that agriculture sector is using a lot of chemicals. There is mechanization, which is affecting the people who are employed in the sector. Whether it's in the supply chain, in the industries, there are chemicals used, but also the environment is risky. Therefore, it's a lot of the employers to make sure they do train. Firstly, they do train their employees on the health and safety issues, including the chemicals being used, the hazard areas in the place, but also provide protection if it's isolating them from exposure or providing the protective clothing. And we know most of the young workers have been subjected to illness, occupation hazards. Therefore, it's very important to have a look for anyone in agriculture sector on the rights for health and safety. And the third point is the rights for young workers to organize or to be unionized in their workplaces. Why this is very important? We all know that through unionization, the workers can join in their forces to demand for their rights. But also it will help to have the collective bargaining agreement in their places. This will help to lift their living wage, which can support their family, but they can be able to provide food, clothing, but also school fees for their families, as we all know that people are working to support their families. And also through the rights to organize and unionize, it will help to determine the employers who are not making sure their working place is adhering to the workers' rights, which are most of them are also human rights. So this is one of the very important points that has to be sensitized. And additional to that, the trade unions, they play a bigger role in making sure most of our employees, but also communicating with the government directly compared to just one workers going to the government to report on different workplace breaching of rights. So when they form and unionize, it's easier to communicate with the government related to the sectors to look after the workers. And the fourth point is rights of migrant workers. We all know through political instability in most countries, there are a lot of migrants. So when they're in a foreign country, they will have to find job to work. And since most of them, they don't have documentation, they will go and work to the unsafe condition works. And one of them is agriculture sector. Therefore, there's a bigger role to be played by both companies, the employers, and the government, but also international to ensure that in different areas where the agriculture works are being done, supply chain, these migrant workers also the living wage and benefits, but health and safety working condition, also to form and to be unionized so they can get the right what all workers are needed to have the safe working condition. And addition to that, on the right of migrant workers, we both know because of the history of where they're coming from, they will find just works which can support their living while they are on the migration. And one of them is the agriculture. Therefore, they are subjected to hazardous chemicals. They don't have representative to speak after them, and it subjects them to occupational disease, some of them injuries and death, where no one can look after them. So it's very important. And lastly, I will speak on abolition of child labor. Why this point is among the workers' rights is because we know that almost 70% of children are being employed in the agriculture sectors around the world. And if you look on the document from ILO, it is the statistics are increasing every day. And adding to the COVID-19 pandemic, some of the parents have passed away. Some of them are suffering from occupational disease resulting from the chemicals being used, also subjected to the chemicals used in the agriculture sector. Now the children are forced to be deprived of their childhood opportunity and to work so that they can earn the living to look after their family. Therefore, some of them is young workers, the people approaching to the adult age. And it's very important for us to look after it, as in most countries, even in Africa, you will find out the children are working not because they want in agriculture sectors. They're working here to earn their living, so they can get the basic stuff for supporting their family, but also school fees. So I would say that both companies, employers, and international organizations have the lot to play on this one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alice. That was such a fantastic intervention on workers' rights, including the rights to a safe workplace, the right of young workers to unionize, and the rights of migrant workers, and also putting the abolition of child labor center stage. So thank you so much for being here with us. And now, just before we open the floor for the discussion, I am very happy to give the floor to Dr. Riel Lopez, the director of the National Center of Disease Prevention and Control for the Mexican government's Ministry of Health. We're very, very grateful to have you here and listen to your reflection about the presentations we just heard today. Yeah, you have 5 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists and the civil society and indigenous people's mechanism for inviting me to participate in this side event, along with the discussions that are ongoing in the CFS. I'd like to also thank the group of experts for the report they presented. The report, as we've heard from previous presentations, is extremely useful. And for the decision makers, I, as the General Director for Center for Public Policies in the Ministry of Health of Mexico, we believe that this report is a great contribution and a very important element that will help us to come up with specific policies that recognize and facilitate the role of youth as drivers of change for food systems within these 4 large pillars. So beyond a doubt, the role that youth will play in the future of food systems is essential. And I, as a convener, together with the technical group of the forums, we organized a forum in preparation for the UN Food System Summit. And we counted with several youth groups that were organized under the different sectors of the agri-food system. And the outcomes of that very interesting forum came out with the same type of priorities that we've heard in many of the other forums with different groups. And what this is telling us is that at least the youth group is identifying the same urgent need to transform agri-food systems. I must also recognize that during this forum, what we didn't see and what we think is very important, and that is why we think we have to continue encouraging an active participation of youth, is that youth during this forum very importantly identified the need to better value the role that youth play as drivers of activism to push public policies in the right direction. Nevertheless, we weren't able to identify any specific policies on how to foster a greater inclusion of youth. The information we got during the forums, including the youth forum, confirmed the need to continue along the way that Mexico is following since the new federal government took office. We need to move from a intensified food system that isn't sustainable, that prioritizes ultra-processed food, towards a fair, healthy, sustainable, and competitive food system that prioritizes unprocessed fresh produce, prioritizing public interest above the interests of corporations. We need a resilient, equitable food system that supports the full exercise of the right to an adequate food in terms of quality and quantity. And in this regard, the role that youth can play is fundamental, both in activism and in civil society, but also in organization and to include youth in decision-making processes. As the HLP states, we need to come up with policies that can look at the different roles and needs of youth groups with regards to land tenure, public space, participation in decision-making, ownership of production means, spaces for marketing, access to credit, use of natural resources, and ITCs. That is, they need specific support to value the important roles they play as actors for change. And in this regard, I think keeping youth in rural communities and allowing them to actively participate in food production and marketing is essential when it comes to having public policies. And in this regards, encouraging the small-scale food production and marketing is essential. And youth are precisely the ones that have to guide us in this transition. Public policies, besides fostering this, must limit the expansion of agri-food business where land is concentrated in the hands of a few, and this hampers the possibilities of youth to stay and work in their rural areas. Youth are key to foster best agroecological practices in their communities and to exchange traditional knowledge for a healthy, fair, and sustainable diet. Having a horizontal dialogue is fundamental to come up with innovative ways of working, respecting the youth that is in the hand, the knowledge that is in the hands of indigenous youth and women who have been able to maintain the diversity of native seeds, and they also contribute to creating local markets, gastronomy fairs, and cooperatives to generate food sustainability and to improve the economy. I think this is a fundamental aspect, that is, coming up with public policies that will allow youths in this huge innovation and the change happening in local markets. This is a key element they can contribute to, and it is very much necessary to overhaul the whole system. And this must be supported with technology and alternatives to agrochemicals, and we have to foster consumers' rights individually and collectively through actions and ideas such as the network of food producers, and we have to foster cooperatives where youth can come together to locally supply the food they produce. We see an urgent need for change and transformation. We have to transform a system, and for this we require innovation. Innovation comes from recovering ancestral knowledge that was in the hands of previous generations, but we have to change them in the way in which we stop the corporate agribusiness. And for this, we need new and fresh ideas. We need the engagement of youth so that this can be a reality. For instance, small and medium-sized food produced in surplus are usually used for local consumption or are lost due to the lack of technology to keep and process this food. So we need to find ways of conserving food. For instance, for fruit, we could have drying units to sell dry fruit, or also producing jams and preserves. Public policies must support small-scale youth food producers through the exchange of surplus. We have to come up with mechanisms for institutional procurement, and we have to certify agroecological products, and we have to cut down on middlemen. And this is why we need to encourage youth groups so that they can organize and work in their communities. And this is part of the many possibilities we have to come up with options that will allow us to come up with mechanisms for fair marketing of their products for young food producers, small and medium sized in the food systems. And this change is urgent. Youth play a key role in this. However, public policies do not reflect this, and global policies don't reflect this either. And that is why we think this report of the HLP, and I'll conclude on this, is, we could say, like a large repertoire of very specific and useful recommendations where each of the member states should use these recommendations and turn them into a reality. Thank you once again for giving me the opportunity of being here, and I will look forward to answering any questions during the Q&A time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lopez. That was really great. How you identified youth as crucial activists and drivers of radical and just transformations of our food systems, and pointing out the need for public policies to support youth agency in local markets, seed conservation, and local food cooperatives, and also pointing out that innovation is also the recovering of ancestral agroecological knowledge and the strengthening of traditional and territorial food systems. So thank you so much. And now I also hand over the facilitation or moderation back to Anissa, who will moderate the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you, everybody. Thank you to all the presenters for your fantastic interventions, for your statements. And yes, we have, I believe, about 10 minutes for discussion. And we have about another 15 minutes left for our side event. I would like to open the floor to anybody who would like to share their thoughts. Especially, I would like to invite any youth that are present here with us today to comment, to ask questions, and to share their thoughts. So please do raise your hand or put a question in the chat. I did see a question a little bit earlier from Claudio, who asked, are there possibilities to join hands with the youth in environment groups and exploit Greta Thunberg's blah, blah, blah denunciation to launch a common front? And perhaps that question was directed to Julia, but of course, Carson, you spoke on equity as well. And Anuka, you spoke very powerfully on women's role in conserving biodiversity and seeds. So I would just open up to anyone who would like to respond to that. How do we join with the climate justice movement, the youth that are involved in those movements? Julia, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just, maybe someone else can also intervene later on, but I was just replying to Claudia as well. I think that many of our organizations are already connected with these youth environmental movements, or like the singular youth are part also in parallel to these youth environmental movements. But I think nice to think about and to work towards, you know, a discussion and collaboration between these two movements, let's say.
Yes, thanks, Julia. Carson, would you like to add to that?
Sorry, Anissa, I think I lost the question. Could you please say the question again?
Sure, no problem. There was a question about how youth food producers, CSM participants could join with the broader youth that are activating for climate justice around the world. So there's climate justice movements. How can we join with them?
Well, the most important thing is to educate yourself. Let's not just join the bandwagon of speaking on climate action, but let it be real. Educate yourself, learn about the struggles of all these intersectionalities. We do have women, young girls, we have, and when you go to a direct position like the indigenous peoples who have always spoke about the link to Mother Nature and having the solutions at heart, passed down from generation after generation. Let's listen to all, educate yourself and follow up on those roles that will give you the guidance to speak authoritatively on that. The most important thing here that I'm mentioning is climate literacy. Educate yourself on the climate literacy and speak through to power. We know that most of the activists speaking on climate justice and environment have faced death. We have martyrs, but still the most important thing is we are renting this moment that we have right now to the future generations. So going back again to my point on intergenerational knowledge sharing or intergenerational dialogue, learn from your elders, learn from those who've come before us, because we are renting this moment to the future generation. Thank you so much, Anissa, back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carson. Would anybody else like to speak to that point? Please let me know. I see somebody has raised their hand. Sorry, I'm just looking here in the... Tai, would you like to speak? Please go ahead.
Absolutely. I'm super happy that we're having this dialogue, first of all. And I wanted to mention a couple of things, and this idea of connecting or having a joint effort between those that are working with the environment, along with those that are working with the food sovereignty, et cetera, is something that needs to happen. And those things are very interconnected. And one of the things that I would like to recommend is that the youth must continue to insist in participating at the COPs for the chemical conventions, particularly the Stockholm, the Basel, and the Rotterdam Convention, as well as the Minamata, because all of those elements are affecting our food. And Alicia was also mentioning about the conditions, the physical conditions that people were experiencing with all these chemicals, et cetera. And one of the things that have been very effective when it comes to the rights of the child is documenting testimonies. You know, like she mentioned, all these people that are getting sick. And when we have community testimonies and then we present them to different bodies or mechanisms available at the UN, you know, we get some good results, particularly because of the way that community testimonies have. So I make those two recommendations, you know, more youth participation on the COPs. We don't have enough, you know, from the indigenous perspective, you know, but I haven't seen a lot of youth there anyway. And it is something that is really impacting. The decisions that are made there will impact the youth, not just now, but when they are older, because sometimes exceptions are made that can be for 50 or 60 years. So you need to keep that into consideration because things can be done, you know, and there's a lot of things with our advocacy that interconnects. And we need to take a look at those factors, you know, and see what can we do and who's working on what and how can we join efforts. So thank you very much. It's really exciting to hear the energy and the interest and the connection that everybody has and the interconnectedness and the intergenerational dialogue that is so important, as Carson was mentioning. Home, thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Ty. Thank you for your comments. Very important to think very practically about mechanisms for meaningful youth participation in these important conversations. Anuka, I think you had your hand up. I'm sorry if I missed you. Would you like to take the floor?
Yes, I think I want to add a little bit about how we make some good point with the climate justice with the agroecology, because agroecology is the solution for the climate justice, and youth is the main generation it's bring up to the future, because we will need to make good discussion with the rural young population, because they are the major impact by the climate change, because they have to leave their field because of the climate change. In the like a South Asian region, we have a huge flood, huge drought, because with this climate change, because of this kind of industrial agriculture making huge issue in the with the losing our resources. We really need to make good discussion with the young population, especially in the rural areas. They are migrating day by day for the urban areas, or they are losing their countries also. They are working in the big agrarian industrial zone, because they are losing their real land. As a agroecology is the real solution for the climate justice. And also as a industrial food producers, the huge biggest damages in the climate change, because for 50% of I don't know English word, like carbon emulsion, they are huge producers for the carbon dioxide and this kind of things. It's mean we really need to make real good discussion. Why young population migrating to living in their village? We really need to make this discussion with the reality. I think that is the solution for the climate justice. We really know what is the solution for the for that. That is the agroecology and food sovereignty. I think we really need to make a discussion with the global voice, young person's voice. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for your very important points and reflections. So I see that Jordan, you had a question in the chat, so I'd just like to invite you to ask it, and then I'll pass the floor to Kio for the final point. So Jordan, over to you.
Thank you, Anisha. I cannot seem to open my video, so I'll just read the question I had off. I was hoping to hear a bit about the role of the role of youth in the massive farmer protests in India around economic justice and the policies of the MSP that's been happening for more than a year now. As an example of the political mobilization that is really needed for pushing governments to engage with civil society and youth on meaningful participatory policy dialogue and negotiation. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Jordan. And I think you had directed that question to Chris. So I'll ask Chris if you'd like to take the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Anisha. Yeah, thank you, Anisha. Regarding the farmers' protest in India, it's really the Indian government made 3 policies, which is really cooperating to the corporate companies. So Indian farmers, we are protesting very long time, and it was really very civil society results and oriented success of this protest. In this, the youth also playing a very important role involving in this protest. By that way, we are able to influence to stop the new policies of India. I hope still this protest is taking place. As you know that recently 3 farmers was killed by the politicians' vehicle, and still the protest is taking place. Thanks to all the CSOs, civil society organizations from the global world giving support to our protest. I hope we will definitely we will make a result, and we are going to impact on this government of policies which is supporting the corporate sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. And we just have a few more minutes. So I would like to pass the floor to Kyo Chandra. Please introduce yourself and go ahead. Thank you very much. No problem. We all have these technical difficulties now.
Yeah.
Please go ahead. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you, Anissa. Yeah, I just would like to share some idea. Yes, my name is Chandra. I am work with Solidarity Health Confederations. We call SH, and the SH is an alliance of with 6 members of a multi-sectoral of a union, NGO, and association. Yes, we are working with a small scale and land affected peasant, youth at university and rural community, environmental activists, civil servant, and independent worker, self-employee, as well as domestic worker in Cambodia. Yeah, we know that the climate justice is not only youth group that can deal the issue alone. So we are together with more than 100 organizations in the region as well as in the international. Yes, together with the marginalized group, including landless peasant as well as a smallholder peasant. Yes, together to join a people declaration and adopt in a global people summit. Yeah, on 23rd September 2021. Yeah, that lay down on commitment to struggle for a just, equitable, healthy, and sustainable food system. Yeah, the radical transformation we are urgent need with people rights at the corner. Yeah, so the declaration will submit on October 16 at the World Hunger Days. Yes, so yes. You know why we are make up the Global People Summit for Just, Equitable, Healthy, and Sustainable Food System, because we find it unacceptable that the UNFSS is proclaiming itself as a so-called People Summit. Yes, when the aspiration and demand of the world's people for the truly radical transformation of food system are being met with lip service while being sidelined by the profit-seeking interests of monopoly corporations As the UN Special Rapporteur on the rights to food point out, the UN's turn to a blind eye to structural cause of a failed food system, ignore worrisome corporate concentrate of power and the rights to participation in decision-making through the so-called multi-stakeholder approach, while supposedly encouraging the contribution, grassroots movement and civil society. The UNFSS lack a transparency and meaningful opportunity for people participate. So that's why I am here today. Yes. Also invite and call for support to endorse on our people declaration on food system, which will be benefit to all and our planet. Yeah, particular the climate justice. Yeah, so the link I already share in the chat box, both the declaration and the endorsement list. So please kindly read and join with us, yeah, together for our planet and our climate justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kyo. Thank you for your powerful words and for all your work to raise awareness about this important issue. And the CSM organizations, civil society organizations have released a public statement of our evaluation of the Food Systems Summit, and that's publicly available. So thank you very much for calling attention to that. So I'm afraid that we have to close the event now because our time is up. So finally, just to thank everybody so much. Thank you to all the youth who spoke today. And thank you very much to Dr. Rui Lopez from the Ministry of Health in Mexico for your words today, to Michael Fakhri, who shared his welcome, to all the organizers today, and especially to the interpreters. We've seen that youth have many experiences, voices, and solutions for change, and that governments and the international community need to listen and urgently respond with holistic solutions to these intersecting crises that we face. The conditions that shape our present and collective futures are not inevitable. Through grassroots organizing, radical food systems transitions, and the political will of UN member states, food sovereignty and more just food futures are possible for us all. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming today, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.